"Human, I can't take it anymore. I need thing between legs." The desperate cry echoed through the United Earth government's diplomatic chambers, silencing the room. Talaxian Ambassador Corvus stood trembling, his alien features contorted in a mix of shame and unbearable need. Decorated war veteran Eugene Kennedy watched the scene unfold, his jaw clenched. He'd been reluctant to accept this assignment, but now he understood its gravity. The fate of the human-Talaxian peace talks, and potentially the end of a decades-long war, hinged on his ability to help this alien diplomat manage his newfound urges. It had started when Corvus first arrived on Earth. The Talaxian delegation's ship touched down amidst tight security, carrying hope for an end to the bloody conflict that had claimed millions of lives. But as Corvus took his first breath of Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. His body reacted violently, racked by tremors and sudden intense sensations. Talaxian scientists quickly determined the cause, a shocking biological compatibility between humans and Talaxians. Earth's environment had triggered a mating drive in Corvus, awakening urges his species had never experienced before. The delegation immediately recognized the threat this posed to the negotiations. In response, the United Earth government assigned Kennedy as a liaison to Corvus. Kennedy's superiors made it clear, help the alien understand and control these urges, or watch the peace talks crumble before they began. Kennedy approached the task with professional detachment, pushing aside his ingrained distrust of the aliens he'd fought for so long. But as days passed, Corvus's condition worsened. The Talaxian struggled to focus on diplomatic proceedings, his attention constantly divided by unfamiliar physical desires. The situation reached a breaking point during a preliminary meeting. Corvus's outburst sent shockwaves through both delegations, threatening to derail the entire process. Kennedy now faced an impossible task: salvage the negotiations while helping Corvus navigate this biological minefield. Unbeknownst to Kennedy, darker forces were at play. Hardline factions on both sides saw Corvus's condition as an opportunity to sabotage the peace talks and prolong the war. A rogue group of human scientists, secretly studying Talaxian biology for years, viewed this as a chance to gather crucial data for potential weapons or methods of control. As news of the Talaxians' reaction to humans spread, public opinion fractured. Some saw it as a sign that peace was possible, a biological bridge between two warring species. Others feared it could lead to interspecies relations that might weaken humanity's position. Kennedy found himself at the center of a political and social firestorm. His every move in handling Corvus would have far-reaching consequences for both humans and Talaxians. The veteran soldier now faced a challenge unlike any he'd encountered on the battlefield: navigate the minefield of alien biology, political intrigue, and public opinion to secure a lasting peace. With the eyes of two worlds upon him, Kennedy steeled himself for the task ahead. The fate of humanity and Talaxians alike rested in his hands, all because an alien diplomat couldn't control the thing between legs. Kennedy's mind raced as he watched Corvus tremble before the stunned diplomats. The veteran soldier had faced down countless Talaxian fighters in battle, but never had he encountered a situation as delicate or as potentially explosive as this. "Ambassador, please," Kennedy said, stepping forward. "Let's move this conversation somewhere more private." He placed a steady hand on Corvus's shoulder, guiding the alien diplomat out of the chamber and away from the shocked stares of both human and Talaxian officials. Once in a secure room, Kennedy activated his comlink. "This is Kennedy. I need Dr. Samantha Hayes here immediately. Top priority." Within the hour, Dr. Hayes arrived, her sharp eyes taking in the scene before her. Corvus sat hunched in a chair, his alien physiology clearly under immense strain. Kennedy briefed her on the situation in hushed tones. "Fascinating," Dr. Hayes murmured, unpacking her equipment. "Ambassador, I'm going to run some non-invasive scans. Is that all right with you?" Corvus nodded weakly, and Dr. Hayes set to work. Her devices hummed and beeped as she methodically examined the Talaxian's biology. Kennedy watched, tension coiling in his gut, as he considered the implications of this development. After what felt like hours, Dr. Hayes stepped back, her face grave. "It's as I suspected. The ambassador's hormonal system is reacting to human pheromones in a way we've never seen before. It's triggering a mating drive so intense it's affecting his entire physiology. Kennedy's brow furrowed. Can you treat it? Dr. Hayes shook her head. Not easily. This reaction is deeply rooted in his biology. Without release, his condition will only worsen. We're looking at potential organ failure, maybe even death if left unchecked. The gravity of the situation settled over Kennedy like a lead weight. What are our options? I need to conduct more tests, Dr. Hayes said, but we may need to consider controlled mating experiments. Kennedy's eyes widened. You can't be serious. I am, Dr. Hayes replied firmly. It may be the only way to save the ambassador's life and keep these peace talks on track. As they discussed the implications, Kennedy's comlink buzzed. A classified message scrolled across the screen, causing his blood to run cold. He excused himself, stepping into the hallway to make a secure call. Sir, Kennedy said as soon as the connection was established, I've received intel about a group called Project Chimera. They've been experimenting on Talaxian POWs, trying to create hybrids. If this gets out, it would destroy any chance of peace, his superior finished. Kennedy, you need to shut this down. Quietly. We can't risk a leak. Kennedy's heart made. Understood, sir. Over the next few days, Kennedy found himself stretched thin between multiple crises. He coordinated with Dr. Hayes to set up a secure laboratory for further study of Corvus's condition, while simultaneously digging into Project Chimera's activities. Each new piece of information he uncovered about the rogue scientists sent a chill down his spine. The experiments they'd conducted on Talaxian prisoners were nothing short of monstrous. Kennedy knew he had to stop them, but he had to do it in a way that wouldn't jeopardize the fragile peace process. Meanwhile, Corvus's condition continued to deteriorate. Dr. Hayes worked tirelessly, her makeshift lab becoming a second home as she raced against time to find a solution. We're running out of options, she told Kennedy one evening, exhaustion evident in her voice. The mating experiment might be our only choice. Kennedy ran a hand through his hair, conflicted. The political fallout would be catastrophic if word got out. And if we do nothing, we lose the ambassador and likely any chance at peace, Dr. Hayes countered. After a long moment, Kennedy nodded. All right, but we need a volunteer, someone who understands the risks and the importance of discretion. Dr. Hayes met his gaze steadily. I think we both know who that needs to be. Kennedy's heart raced as the realization hit him. Of course, as Corvus's liaison, he was the logical choice. But the idea of intimate contact with an alien, one he'd spent years fighting against, sent his pupils dilating. As Dr. Hayes began preparations for the experiment, setting up an isolation chamber with sophisticated monitoring equipment, Kennedy grappled with his decision. He'd volunteered for countless dangerous missions before, but none quite like this. The situation grew even more complex when Kennedy uncovered a mole within the diplomatic team. Marcus Holt, a junior diplomat, was caught attempting to transmit classified information to Project Chimera. Under intense interrogation, Holt revealed the rogue group's plans to sabotage the mating experiment. With time running out and threats closing in from all sides, Kennedy found himself racing against the clock. He doubled security around the lab, personally vetting every individual with access to the isolation chamber. As the day of the experiment approached, protests erupted outside the United Earth Government headquarters. Angry voices from both species decried the very idea of interspecies mating, demanding an end to the peace talks. Inside, Kennedy stood before the entrance to the isolation chamber, his heart pounding. Dr. Hayes ran through final checks on her equipment, her face a mask of professional focus despite the unprecedented nature of what they were about to attempt. "Are you ready?" she asked, looking up at Kennedy. He took a deep breath, thinking of the enormity of what rested on this moment, the fate of two species, the possibility of peace after decades of war, all hanging in the balance because of an unexpected quirk of biology. "As ready as I'll ever be," Kennedy replied, stepping towards the chamber door. Whatever happened next would change the course of human and Talaxian history forever. Kennedy took a deep breath and stepped towards the isolation chamber, his hand hovering over the entry panel. Just as he was about to press it, Dr. Hayes' voice cut through the tension. "Wait!" she called out, her eyes fixed on a rapidly blinking display. "Something's wrong." Kennedy froze, his soldier's instincts kicking in. "What is it?" Dr. Hayes' fingers flew across the console, her face growing increasingly pale. "The chamber's life support systems are malfunctioning. If you go in there now—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. "Sabotage?" Kennedy asked, his mind already racing through the implications. "Almost certainly," Dr. Hayes confirmed. "This has Project Chimera written all over it." Kennedy clenched his fist, fury and frustration warring within him. They'd been so close, and now this. He glanced at Corvus, who sat slumped in a chair, his alien features contorted in pain. "We're running out of time," Kennedy said. "What are our options?" Dr. Hayes was silent for a long moment, her brilliant mind clearly working overtime. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "Earth," she said. "What?" "Earth's natural environment," she explained, her words coming faster now. "We've been so focused on creating a controlled setting, we overlooked the most obvious solution. Corvus's condition was triggered by Earth's atmosphere in the first place. What if that's the key?" Kennedy raised an eyebrow. "You want to conduct the experiment outside?" "Not just outside," Dr. Hayes said, her excitement growing. "In a completely natural Earth ecosystem. No artificial controls, no isolation chambers, just pure, unadulterated Earth." The idea was so audacious, so far removed from their carefully laid plans, that Kennedy almost laughed. But as he considered it, he realized it might be their only chance. Within hours, the plan was set in motion. The United Earth government, desperate for a solution, greenlit the operation with minimal pushback. A remote tropical island in the Pacific Ocean, codenamed Eden, was quickly prepared. As Kennedy and Corvus boarded the transport to Eden, news of the experiment leaked. Kennedy's comlink buzzed constantly with updates from the mainland. Protests erupting in cities worldwide, riots breaking out in some areas. He switched it off, knowing he needed to focus on the task at hand. The island was a paradise, untouched by civilization. As they stepped off the transport, Kennedy felt the warm sand between his toes and breathed in the salty air. Beside him, Corvus seemed to perk up slightly, his antennae twitching with interest. Dr. Hayes led them to a clearing where a small camouflage structure stood, the entrance to the underground monitoring station. "We'll be observing from here," she explained. "The rest of the island is yours to explore. Remember, you have 1 week." As night fell, Kennedy and Corvus found themselves alone on the beach. The sounds of the waves and distant wildlife created a peaceful backdrop, so different from the sterile environments they'd been in before. "How are you feeling?" Kennedy asked, studying Corvus's face in the moonlight. "Strange," Corvus replied, his voice a low rumble. "But better, I think. The air here, it's—" "Alive," Kennedy finished, understanding exactly what the alien meant. As the days passed, Kennedy noticed changes in himself. His senses seemed sharper, his reflexes quicker. He could hear the faintest rustle of leaves, smell the subtle differences between various tropical flowers. His body felt stronger, more in tune with the environment around him. Corvus underwent changes too. The alien diplomat began to display more recognizable emotions, his usually stoic demeanor giving way to moments of joy, curiosity, and even humor. Kennedy found himself drawn to this new, more expressive version of Corvus. On the third night, as they sat by a fire on the beach, Kennedy felt a strange sensation, a tickle in the back of his mind like a half-heard whisper. He looked up to find Corvus staring at him intently. "Did you say something?" Kennedy asked. Corvus shook his head. "No, but I thought I heard you." They both fell silent, realization dawning. Somehow they were developing a psychic link. Kennedy could sense Corvus's confusion, his lingering discomfort, but also a growing affection. He wondered if Corvus could sense his own conflicted emotions, the duty warring with unexpected attraction. In the monitoring station, Dr. Hayes watched the readings with growing excitement and trepidation. The changes in both subjects were far beyond anything she'd anticipated. Kennedy's DNA was showing signs of Talaxian influence, while Corvus's physiology was adapting to Earth's environment at an astonishing rate. As the experiment entered its final days, the connection between Kennedy and Corvus deepened. They moved in sync, communicated without words, their bodies and minds growing ever more attuned to each other. The mating drive that had so tormented Corvus now seemed to hum between them, a shared energy building towards an inevitable crescendo. On the sixth night, as Kennedy and Corvus stood at the water's edge, their hands intertwined, alarms blared from the monitoring station. Dr. Hayes's voice crackled over the emergency comm system. "Kennedy, we've got incoming hostiles. Project Chimera mercenaries, heavily armed. They've breached our outer defenses." Kennedy's combat instincts kicked in immediately. He turned to Corvus, seeing his own tenacity reflected in the alien's eyes. Whatever was between them, whatever they were becoming, would have to wait. "We need to move," Kennedy said, already scanning the tree line for signs of the intruders. "Get to the monitoring station. I'll hold them off." Corvus gripped Kennedy's arm. "No, we face this together." As the sound of approaching vehicles filled the air, Kennedy and Corvus stood side by side on the beach, human and Talaxian, no longer enemies, not quite lovers, but something new, something that could change everything. The peaceful experiment was about to become a battlefield, with the future of two species hanging in the balance. And as the first mercenaries emerged from the jungle, Kennedy felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced before. Whatever happened next, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. The peaceful night erupted into chaos as the first mercenaries burst from the jungle. Kennedy's enhanced senses picked up the sound of boots crunching on sand and the metallic click of weapons being readied. He turned to Corvus, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. "Get to the monitoring station," Kennedy ordered, his voice low and urgent. "I'll hold them off." Corvus shook his head, his antennae quivering with commitment. "No, we face this together." Before Kennedy could argue, a burst of gunfire split the air. They dove for cover behind a cluster of boulders, the sound of bullets ricocheting off stone filling their ears. "Dr. Hayes," Kennedy hissed into his comm, "we're under attack. Initiate emergency protocols." "Already on it," came the terse reply. "We're securing the data and preparing for evacuation. Be careful out there." Kennedy's mind raced, assessing their options. His heightened senses allowed him to pinpoint the mercenaries' positions with uncanny accuracy. He could hear their heavy breathing, smell the acrid scent of their weapon discharge. "Corvus," he whispered, "I need you to create a distraction. Can you use your bioluminescence?" The Talaxian nodded, understanding immediately. As Corvus began to glow, drawing the mercenaries' attention, Kennedy slipped away into the underbrush. Moving with a grace and speed he'd never possessed before, Kennedy circled behind the attackers. He grabbed vines from nearby trees, quickly fashioning crude traps. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The plants seemed to respond to his touch, twisting and growing at an accelerated rate. One of the mercenaries stumbled into a tripwire. Instantly, a cluster of nearby flowers released a cloud of spores. The man collapsed, coughing and wheezing. "What the hell?" another mercenary shouted. "Watch out for the plants!" Kennedy used the confusion to his advantage, taking down 3 more mercenaries with swift, silent strikes. As he moved, he felt Corvus's presence in his mind, guiding him, warning him of incoming threats. Back at the monitoring station, Dr. Hayes watched the readings with a mix of awe and trepidation. "The stress is accelerating their changes," she muttered to herself. "Their DNA, it's reconfiguring in real time." On the beach, Kennedy reunited with Corvus. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions without a word. Their synchronized movements allowed them to outmaneuver the mercenaries, driving them back towards the jungle. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the tree line, a tall, scarred man with cold eyes. Victor Drax. "Impressive," Drax drawled, leveling a high-powered rifle at them. "But this ends now." Kennedy and Corvus found themselves backed against the cliff edge, the ocean roaring below. Drax advanced, flanked by his remaining men. In that moment, Kennedy made a split-second decision. He grabbed Corvus and, without hesitation, leaped off the cliff. They plunged into the icy water, the shock jolting through their systems. As they sank beneath the waves, something extraordinary happened. Their bodies began to glow, casting an ethereal light in the dark waters. The bioluminescence attracted a swarm of strange mutated sea creatures. Fish with extra fins, squid with elongated tentacles, and other bizarre hybrids circled them curiously. To Kennedy's amazement, the creatures formed a protective barrier, keeping Drax's men at bay as they tried to pursue. As Kennedy and Corvus surfaced, they found themselves in the middle of a breathtaking spectacle. The ocean around them pulsed with light, their own bioluminescence mingling with that of the mutated marine life. In this surreal, glowing sanctuary, Kennedy felt a change come over him. His body tingled with an intense energy, every cell seeming to vibrate in harmony with Corvus. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something clicked into place. The mating process began, triggered by the extreme stress and their shared brush with death. It was unlike anything either of them could have imagined, emerging not just of bodies, but of minds and souls. As they floated in the glowing water, their forms began to shift and change. Kennedy's skin took on a faint blue tinge, while Corvus's hardened carapace softened. Their features blended, creating something entirely new, neither fully human nor Talaxian, but a perfect synthesis of both. On the shore, Drax and his men regrouped, preparing to mount another assault. But before they could act, the sky lit up with the arrival of Talaxian ships. The rescue team, alerted by the diplomatic delegation, had arrived in force. Advanced weaponry made short work of Drax's remaining forces. The mercenary leader himself was quickly subdued, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. As the Talaxian team secured the beach, Dr. Hayes emerged from the monitoring station, her eyes wide with wonder and apprehension. She watched as Kennedy and Corvus walked out of the surf, hand in hand, their transformed bodies glistening in the moonlight. The Talaxian soldiers froze, weapons half raised, unsure how to react to the sight before them. Kennedy and Corvus stood tall, their new hybrid forms a living testament to what was possible between their species. Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her scientific mind already racing with the implications of what she was seeing. "My God," she breathed. "You've done it. You've actually done it." As the gravity of the situation settled over the beach, Kennedy felt a mix of emotions wash over him. Relief at their survival, amazement at their transformation, and a deep uncertainty about what would come next. The successful mating of a human and a Talaxian had produced something unprecedented, a new form of life that bridged the gap between their species. But as Kennedy looked into Corvus's eyes, seeing his own reflection in their alien depths, he knew that this was only the beginning. News of what had transpired on Eden would soon spread, sending shockwaves through both human and Talaxian societies. The peace negotiations, already fragile, would be thrown into turmoil. And at the center of it all would be Kennedy and Corvus, living proof that coexistence was possible, but at a cost neither side had anticipated. As the Talaxian ships hummed overhead and the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Kennedy tightened his grip on Corvus's hand. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, not as human and Talaxian, but as something entirely new. The dawn broke over Eden Island, casting a warm glow on Kennedy and Corvus as they stood hand in hand, their transformed bodies glistening in the morning light. Dr. Hayes approached them cautiously, her eyes wide with a mixture of scientific curiosity and awe. "We need to get you both to a secure facility," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The implications of what's happened here, it's beyond anything we could have imagined." Within hours, a state-of-the-art research complex was established on Eden Island. The United Earth government spared no expense, bringing in the most advanced equipment and top scientists from around the world. At the center of it all were Kennedy and Corvus, their hybrid forms a living testament to the potential for human and Talaxian integration. Dr. Hayes led the research team, conducting a battery of tests on the couple. Kennedy found himself subjected to endless scans, blood draws, and physical examinations. Despite the invasive nature of the tests, he felt a sense of calm, anchored by Corvus's steady presence in his mind. Your cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Hayes explained, poring over holographic displays of their DNA. The human and Talaxian genomes have merged in ways we thought impossible. Your strength, your healing abilities, they're off the charts. Corvus nodded, his antennae twitching with interest. We can breathe in both Earth and Talaxian atmospheres now. It's as if our bodies have adapted to thrive in either environment. As the days passed, Kennedy and Corvus discovered the true extent of their transformation. Their psychic link deepened, allowing them to communicate without words and share sensory experiences. Kennedy closed his eyes and suddenly found himself seeing through Corvus's compound eyes, the world a kaleidoscope of colors and patterns. Outside the research facility, Eden Island was changing. The local flora and fauna underwent rapid mutations, creating a bizarre and beautiful ecosystem that mirrored the blending of human and Talaxian biology. Massive flowers with iridescent petals sprouted overnight, while strange creatures with characteristics of both Earth and Talaxian wildlife roamed the jungles. Dr. Hayes and her team ventured into this new wilderness, collecting samples and documenting the changes. These hybrid plants, she marveled, examining a fruit that pulsed with bioluminescence. They're growing at an incredible rate and seem resistant to all known diseases. This could be the key to solving food shortages on both our worlds. As news of the successful hybridization spread, the public reaction was swift and polarized. Pro-hybridization groups celebrated the breakthrough, hailing it as the dawn of a new era of interspecies cooperation. In contrast, anti-hybridization factions took to the streets in violent protests. Kennedy watched footage of the demonstrations on a holoscreen, his heart heavy. "I never imagined our union would cause such chaos," he said to Corvus. Corvus placed a comforting hand on Kennedy's shoulder. "Change is never easy, but what we've become, it's proof that our species can coexist, can become something greater together." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by the arrival of a Talaxian delegation. High Commander Zaxalor strode into the research facility, his imposing figure radiating authority and barely concealed hostility. "We demand to see the hybrids," Zaxalor growled, his voice like gravel. "The Talaxian government requires independent verification of this aberration." Dr. Hayes stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "Of course, Commander, but I assure you, what we've achieved here is no aberration. It's the future." As Zaxalor and his team of scientists began their own battery of tests, Kennedy and Corvus retreated to their quarters. That night, as they lay intertwined, their minds merged in a shared dreamscape. Visions of a possible future unfolded before them. Vast cities where humans and Talaxians lived side by side. Hybrid children playing in parks beneath alien skies. And starships crewed by beings who were neither fully human nor Talaxian, but something gloriously new. They awoke to find Dr. Hayes at their bedside, her face alight with excitement. "Your neural patterns during sleep," she explained, gesturing to a holographic display of their brain activity. "They're unlocking latent psychic abilities in both species. This hybridization, it could be the next stage of evolution for humans and Talaxians alike." As the implications of their transformation continued to unfold, a new threat emerged from the shadows. Victor Drax, having escaped capture during the mercenary raid, was busy gathering followers from the fringes of both human and Talaxian society. His newly formed Purity Front was dedicated to one goal: the eradication of all hybrid research and the elimination of Kennedy and Corvus. Unaware of the gathering storm, Kennedy and Corvus continued to adapt to their new existence. During a routine examination, Dr. Hayes made a startling discovery. "Corvus," she said, her voice filled with wonder, "you're pregnant. You're carrying the first naturally conceived human-Talaxian hybrid child." The news sent shockwaves through the research facility and beyond. For Kennedy and Corvus, it was a moment of joy tinged with apprehension. As they stood on the beach that evening, watching the bioluminescent creatures in the water form intricate patterns that resembled star charts, Kennedy placed a hand on Corvus's abdomen. "Our child," he said softly, "will be born into a world that's not ready for them." Corvus's antenna quivered with emotion. "Then we'll make it ready. Together." As night fell over Eden Island, The ocean glowed with the light of countless luminids. In the research facility, Dr. Hayes and her team worked tirelessly to unravel the mysteries of hybridization. And in the shadows, forces gathered, ready to either embrace or destroy the future that Kennedy and Corvus represented. The dawn of a new era had arrived, bringing with it both promise and peril. For Kennedy and Corvus, their transformation was complete, but their journey was not nearly finished. The news of Corvus's pregnancy spread like wildfire through the research facility on Eden Island. Dr. Hayes couldn't contain her excitement as she shared the results with Kennedy and Corvus. "This is unprecedented," she said, her eyes gleaming with scientific fervor. "We're going to need to set up a dedicated medical wing to monitor every aspect of this pregnancy." Within days, a state-of-the-art medical facility materialized on Eden Island, filled with equipment specifically designed to track the development of the hybrid fetus. Kennedy watched in awe as holographic displays showed the rapid growth of their child, its unique genetic makeup a swirling dance of human and Talaxian DNA. As Corvus's abdomen swelled with new life, the world beyond Eden Island descended into chaos. Reports of violent attacks on pro-hybridization targets flooded in from across the globe. Kennedy's heart sank as he watched footage of a devastating assault on a major Earth city, the work of the Purity Front led by the escaped Victor Drax. "This is getting out of hand," Kennedy muttered, his fists clenched at his sides. Corvus placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, their shared emotions flowing through their psychic link. The United Earth government's response was swift and severe. Mandatory genetic screening was implemented for all citizens and visitors, a move that sent shockwaves through human society. Protests erupted in cities worldwide, with humans fearing discrimination based on their genetic makeup. On Eden Island, life continued at its own frenetic pace. Corvus's pregnancy progressed far more rapidly than anyone had anticipated, a side effect of their hybrid physiology. Dr. Hayes and her team worked around the clock, documenting every unprecedented change. "The fetus is developing traits from both species at an extraordinary rate," Dr. Hayes explained during one of their daily checkups. "We're seeing the potential for abilities that surpass both humans and Talaxians." As Corvus's pregnancy advanced, a peculiar phenomenon caught the attention of the research team. The bioluminescent luminids began gathering in ever-increasing numbers around Eden Island. Their patterns in the water grew more complex, resembling intricate schematics. Dr. Hayes squinted at a holographic recreation of the luminids' latest formation. This looks like a blueprint for some kind of advanced energy production system," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Kennedy and Corvus spent their evenings on the beach, watching the mesmerizing display of lights in the water. "What do you think it means?" Kennedy asked, his hand resting gently on Corvus's swollen abdomen. Corvus's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's a gift, a sign of what our species can achieve together." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Nixara, leader of a moderate Talaxian delegation, sent to negotiate a new treaty on hybrid rights and research. The ambassador's ship landed on Eden Island amidst tight security, a testament to the volatile political climate. Kennedy and Corvus were present for the welcoming ceremony, standing beside Dr. Hayes as Ambassador Nixara disembarked. The Talaxian diplomat's eyes widened at the sight of the hybrid couple, her gaze lingering on Corvus's pregnant form. "So it's true," Nixara said, her voice a mix of awe and apprehension. "A naturally conceived hybrid child." Before anyone could respond, chaos erupted. A group of Purity Front extremists, having somehow infiltrated the island's security, launched an attack on the delegation. Shots rang out, and Ambassador Nixara fell to the ground. In that moment of crisis, a team of hybrid security personnel sprang into action. Their movements were a blur, their reflexes and strength far beyond normal human or Talaxian capabilities. Within seconds, the attackers were subdued, and the ambassador was whisked to safety. As the dust settled, Kennedy and Corvus exchanged a look of shared understanding. The hybrid's exceptional performance in the face of danger would undoubtedly shift public opinion, demonstrating the potential benefits of their unique abilities. Weeks passed, and Corvus's pregnancy neared its end far sooner than anyone had expected. The day of the birth arrived with little warning, catching even Dr. Hayes off guard. "We need to move quickly," Dr. Hayes said, her voice tense as she led Corvus to the medical facility. "Your hybrid physiology is making this birth unlike anything we've ever seen." As labor began, Kennedy took Corvus's hand, their psychic link surging with shared pain and anticipation. Suddenly, a pulse of energy emanated from their joined hands, causing every piece of electronic equipment in the room to flicker and die. Dr. Hayes and her team scrambled to switch to backup systems, working feverishly to monitor Corvus's condition. Outside, the luminids in the ocean began to pulse with an intensity never before seen, their light visible from space. In orbit above Eden Island, human and Talaxian space fleets converged, drawn by the spectacular bioluminescent display. The standoff added to the tension already thick in the air of the medical facility. As Corvus's labor intensified, the energy surges from their psychic link grew stronger. Kennedy gasped as he felt a strange tingling sensation spreading throughout his body. Looking down, he saw his skin shimmering with a faint blue glow. Dr. Hayes' eyes widened as she glanced at her datapad. The hybrid ecosystem across the island, it's evolving at an exponential rate. Plants, animals, everything is changing. The medical team worked tirelessly, improvising new procedures on the spot to handle the unique challenges presented by Corvus's hybrid physiology. Kennedy stood by, his heart racing as he watched the birth of their child unfold amidst the chaos of malfunctioning equipment and the pulsing light from the ocean outside. As the moment of birth drew near, the energy in the room reached a fever pitch. The walls seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly hum, and the air crackled with an electric charge. Kennedy and Corvus's psychic link flared to new heights, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass the entire island. In that moment of connection, they sensed the rapidly evolving ecosystem around them, felt the presence of the luminids in the ocean, and even glimpsed the tense standoff occurring in orbit above. Everything seemed to converge on this single point in time and space, the birth of their child poised to reshape the future of human-Talaxian relations, and perhaps the very nature of life on Eden Island. Dr. Hayes' voice cut through the din, filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Here it comes! Get ready, everyone! We're about to witness history." "History in the making," Dr. Hayes said, her voice trembling with anticipation. The air in the medical facility crackled with energy as Corvus's labor reached its peak. Kennedy gripped his partner's hand tightly, their psychic link pulsing with shared pain and willpower. The medical team worked feverishly, adapting to the constant disruptions caused by the surges of energy emanating from the couple. "We've lost the fetal monitors again," a nurse called out, frustration evident in her voice. Dr. Hayes nodded grimly. "We'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Everyone, listen closely for the heartbeat." As the medical team scrambled to adjust, the world outside the facility was undergoing a transformation of its own. Through their expanded consciousness, Kennedy and Corvus sensed the rapid changes sweeping across Eden Island. Trees that had stood for centuries were sprouting new, iridescent leaves. Animals darted through the underbrush, their forms shifting and adapting with each passing minute. In orbit, the situation was equally tense. Admiral Marcus Davis paced the bridge of his flagship, the UES Horizon, his brow furrowed as he received the latest communique from Earth. "Admiral, we have new orders," his communications officer reported. "We're to secure Eden Island at all costs." Davis's teeth clenched. "Understood. Inform all ships to prepare for potential hostile engagement." Across the void of space aboard the Talaxian warship Nexar, Fleet Commander Vextra issued her own set of orders. "Ready the landing craft. We will claim the hybrid child for the glory of Talax." Back on Earth, chaos reigned. Victor Drax, his face contorted with hatred, led a team of Purity Front extremists through the smoking ruins of the Project Genesis headquarters. "Destroy everything!" Drax shouted, his voice hoarse from the acrid smoke filling the air. "Leave no trace of this abomination." As Drax and his followers rampaged through the facility, a group of security personnel took cover behind a barricade of overturned desks. Among them were several early-stage hybrids, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Hold the line," shouted the security chief. "We can't let them reach the main data core." On Eden Island, Corvus let out a final, piercing cry. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the force of her effort. Kennedy's vision blurred, overwhelmed by the surge of sensations flowing through their psychic link. "I can see the head," Dr. Hayes exclaimed. "One more push, Corvus." With a monumental effort, Corvus gave one last push. The room filled with a blinding light, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. As the light faded, a new sound filled the air, the cry of a newborn child. Dr. Hayes gasped as she held up the infant. "It's incredible," she whispered. The child was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, pulsing in rhythm with its cries. Delicate antennae, reminiscent of Corvus's, twitched above a face that blended the best features of both human and Talaxian physiologies. As Kennedy and Corvus gazed in wonder at their child, a massive surge of energy erupted from the infant's body. The pulse expanded outward at an impossible speed, engulfing the island and spreading far into space. In orbit, Admiral Davis stumbled as every system on his ship suddenly went dark. "Report!" he barked, steadying himself against a console. "Sir, we've lost all power," his second-in-command replied, panic evident in his voice. "Weapons, shields, engines, everything's offline." Similar scenes played out across both fleets, leaving the once mighty armadas drifting helplessly in space. On the island below, Dr. Hayes and her team worked by the light of emergency chemical lamps, their advanced medical equipment rendered useless by the energy pulse. "The child's vitals are strong," Dr. Hayes reported, relying on a simple stethoscope. "But there's something else. It's growing at an extraordinary rate." Indeed, as they watched, the infant's body seemed to shimmer and change. Within hours, it had reached the size and apparent development of a human toddler. Kennedy and Corvus, still reeling from the intense birth experience, watched in awe as their child opened its eyes for the first time. The eyes were a swirling mix of human and Talaxian features, with an intelligence that seemed far beyond that of a newborn. Suddenly, both Kennedy and Corvus gasped, hearing a clear voice in their minds. "Hello, parents." Dr. Hayes, noticing their reaction, looked concerned. "What is it? What's wrong?" Kennedy shook his head, amazed. "Nothing's wrong. Our child, it's speaking to us, telepathically." As if in response to this new development, the oceans surrounding Eden Island came alive with light. The luminids, gathering in numbers never before seen, began to move in intricate patterns. Their bioluminescent displays coalesced into a massive three-dimensional hologram, visible for miles around. The hologram depicted scenes of humans and Talaxians working side by side, advancing technology beyond anything currently known, and exploring distant stars together. The message was clear, a vision of a unified future for both species. In orbit, as systems slowly came back online, the crews of both fleets watched the display in awe. Admiral Davis, his earlier aggression forgotten, turned to his communications officer. "Get me a channel to the Talaxian flagship. I think it's time we talked." On Earth, the battle at the Project Genesis facility took an unexpected turn. As Victor Drax prepared to detonate his hidden explosive, a group of advanced hybrids seemingly materialized out of thin air. "Impossible," Drax muttered, his finger frozen above the detonator. One of the hybrids, a woman with eyes that seemed to see through time itself, smiled coldly. "I'm afraid your plan ends here, Mr. Drax." Before Drax could react, the hybrid had disarmed the explosive and pinned him to the ground with inhuman speed and strength. Back on Eden Island, Dr. Hayes worked feverishly to analyze the rapidly developing hybrid child. The proteins and enzymes its body is producing, I've never seen anything like this. The medical implications are staggering. As Kennedy and Corvus cradled their child, now the size of a young child and growing still, they felt a mix of joy and apprehension. Their child, whom they decided to name Nova, represented a new dawn for both their species, but they knew that challenges still lay ahead. Nova looked up at them, its eyes filled with wisdom beyond its years. "Don't worry," it communicated telepathically. "I'm ready for what comes next." Outside the medical facility, the skies above Eden Island filled with the lights of approaching ships. The human and Talaxian fleets, their weapon systems powered down, descended toward the island in a gesture of peace. Kennedy and Corvus exchanged a look of grit. It was time to introduce Nova to the world and usher in a new era of human-Talaxian relations. As they prepared to step outside, Nova took each of their hands, its touch sending a surge of energy through them. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, as they stood united as a family, Kennedy and Corvus felt a glimmer of hope for the path that lay ahead. As Kennedy, Corvus, and Nova prepared to step outside, the air hummed with anticipation. The skies above Eden Island filled with the lights of approaching ships, their weapons systems powered down in a gesture of peace. The human and Talaxian fleets descended slowly, their massive forms casting long shadows over the lush, transformed landscape. Admiral Marcus Davis stood at the helm of his landing craft, his mind focused as they touched down on the island. Across the clearing, Fleet Commander Vextra's sleek Talaxian shuttle settled onto the verdant grass, its engines whining as they powered down. The two leaders emerged from their respective vessels, followed by a cadre of diplomats and security personnel. Their eyes widened as they took in the sight before them. The island had become a riot of color and life, with new hybrid species of plants and animals thriving in every direction. At the center of it all stood Kennedy and Corvus, their hands clasped tightly together. Between them stood Nova, now resembling a young child, its iridescent skin pulsing with an otherworldly glow. As the delegation approached, Nova's eyes locked onto theirs. Suddenly, both humans and Talaxians heard a clear, melodious voice in their minds. "Welcome to Eden Island," Nova communicated telepathically, the words resonating in both human and Talaxian languages. "We've been expecting you." Admiral Davis stumbled, caught off guard by the mental intrusion. Fleet Commander Vextra's antenna twitched in surprise, her stoic facade cracking for a moment. "Incredible," Davis muttered, regaining his composure. "The reports were true." Vextra nodded, her eyes never leaving Nova. "Indeed, it seems we have much to discuss." Dr. Hayes stepped forward, datapad in hand. "Admiral, Commander, if you'll follow me, we've prepared a briefing area where we can talk more comfortably." As the group made their way across the island, Nova began to speak, its words flowing directly into their minds. The child painted a vivid picture of a future where humans and Talaxians worked side by side, exploring the cosmos and pushing the boundaries of science and technology. "Our differences are not weaknesses," Nova projected, its mental voice filled with conviction. "They are the source of our strength. Together, we can achieve things neither of our species could alone." The delegation listened, enraptured by Nova's words and the stunning visions that accompanied them. Even the most skeptical members found themselves nodding along, their doubts melting away in the face of such wisdom and potential. As they reached the briefing area, a series of explosions rocked the island. Alarms blared from the orbiting ships, and security personnel sprang into action. "We're under attack," Davis shouted, reaching for his communicator. Through the chaos, a new voice crackled over the emergency channels. "This is High Commander Zach Salor of the Purity Front. We will not allow this abomination to continue. Prepare to be cleansed." Kennedy's face paled as he recognized the threat. "They've developed a weapon to target hybrid DNA," he explained quickly. "If it reaches us—" Before he could finish, Nova stepped forward, its small form radiating an intense energy. The child raised its hands, and a shimmering dome of light expanded outward, enveloping the entire island. "Nova, what are you doing?" Corvus cried out, reaching for her child. "Protecting us," Nova replied, its mental voice strained with effort. "But I can't hold it forever." As if in response to Nova's actions, the ocean surrounding Eden Island came alive. The luminids, gathering in numbers never before seen, began to move in unison. Their bioluminescent bodies formed a massive living barrier around the island, intertwining with Nova's energy field. The Purity Front's weapons streaked through the sky, a sickly green beam of energy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of hybrid life on Eden Island. As it struck the luminid barrier, the ocean creatures began to glow with an intensity that rivaled the sun. "They're absorbing the attack," Dr. Hayes gasped, her eyes wide with wonder and horror. The luminids pulsed and writhed, their bodies breaking down as they neutralized the weapon's effects. One by one, they winked out of existence, their sacrifice ensuring the safety of the island and its inhabitants. As the last of the Luminides faded away, a stunned silence fell over the group. Humans and Talaxians alike stood in awe of the selfless act they had just witnessed. Admiral Davis was the first to break the silence. "I've seen enough," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This madness ends now." Fleet Commander Vextra nodded in agreement. "Indeed, it is time for a new chapter in our shared history." In the days that followed, Kennedy and Corvus, along with Nova, found themselves addressing a joint session of the United Earth Government and Talaxian High Council. As they spoke of unity and shared purpose, Nova projected visions of a harmonious future, its powers growing stronger by the day. The governments, moved by their words and Nova's undeniable potential, formally ended hostilities and embraced the promise of hybridization. The Purity Front, its leadership captured or scattered, quickly crumbled in the face of this new era of cooperation. As the weeks turned to months, Eden Island became the center of a rapidly evolving hybrid civilization. The unique ecosystem that had sprung up during Nova's birth began to spread, transforming the once inhospitable planet into a world capable of supporting both human and Talaxian life. Dr. Hayes threw herself into researching the medical potential of hybrid biology, her eyes alight with excitement as she uncovered new miracles every day. "The possibilities are endless," she often remarked, her lab bustling with a mix of human, Talaxian, and hybrid researchers. Kennedy and Corvus, now revered as the progenitors of this new age, found themselves at the helm of the newly established Interspecies Cooperation Council. Their days were filled with meetings and diplomatic functions, but they always made time for Nova, whose growth and abilities continued to astound them. As Nova approached its 7th year, looking and behaving like a young adult, it became clear that the child's destiny lay beyond the confines of Eden Island. One evening, as the family watched the sunset over the transformed landscape, Nova turned to its parents with a bittersweet smile. "It's time for me to go," Nova communicated, its mental voice tinged with both excitement and sadness. "There's so much out there to explore, to learn, but I promise I'll always carry a part of you with me." Kennedy and Corvus embraced their child, tears streaming down their faces as they said their goodbyes. As Nova prepared to embark on its cosmic journey, the eyes of two worlds turned to the stars, united in hope and wonder at the possibilities that lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.